Well, hello, all you Manwatch maniacs, and welcome back for another action-packed season of the Inspection Podcast. Now that dumpster fire of 2020 is over, we've got a fresh season and a new episode for you. Today's episode, we're taking some listener questions and going over a bit of a year in review. Sit back and enjoy.
Manwatch maniacs, I like it.
Well, we're getting a bit of a following, right? They might as well have a name.
That's pretty good. That was off the cuff too, so great job, Scott.
Oh yeah, it's just trying to get the words out and not think too far ahead.
Scott, we haven't seen each other for like a few weeks at least, hey? How you been?
Yeah, it's been a while. Been communicating, but haven't actually seen your beautiful face in a while. Yeah. So yeah, it's good to be back recording again and having a little fun before the real work starts again in the spring. So
yeah, I know for sure. It's looking like a pretty busy spring coming up, hey? A lot of opportunities anyway.
Yeah, it always is, right? Once you start getting closer and seeing who's having turnarounds and just kind of communicating with everyone again, it's always busy, right? Spring and fall, with the exception of this last year was a little unusual spring, but it's good to be, not that we're back to normal by any stretch, but on the work front it kind of is, right? Just, hearing about what people are doing, you're going here, you're going there, this type of thing. So yeah, I don't know, I always like that little frenzy action before the turnaround season.
Yeah, that's actually one of the funnest parts is seeing where everybody is going and try and team up with them, and so you can have a more enjoyable turnaround experience, I guess, hey, and even learn and feel comfortable with people and bounce ideas off them while you're working, especially when you run into some weird questions or problems.
Oh yeah, it's nice to that's the best part about the turnarounds is having fun. Like obviously the money's good and the job's interesting, all these other things too, but just some of the friends that you've developed strictly through working, you don't really know them anywhere other than that, but they're, you'd consider them pretty good friends and you have a good time with them. It's that's one of my favorite things about turnarounds, is running into those guys again and just having a great time.
Yeah, it's a condensed relationship. You're spending 12 to 14 hours a day with them side by side, getting dirty, and then all of a sudden you disappear off into the ether until it happens again. So yeah, good point. So I guess we're going to tackle some listener questions. I think we had some 3 vocal listeners. Our 3 listeners were pretty vocal and asked us a bunch of questions. Some pretty good ones and some that may require some review, but maybe I know we got it at the bottom of the list. Did we want to kind of just go over some of the past episodes for some reference, just in case people want to touch on a few things, in case they're new listeners, jumping in on it?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. We'll maybe do a quick review of the episodes we did last year. So this is our opener for season 2, I guess, however you want to look at that. But if you're new coming into it, this is far from the first episode. We did 14 episodes last year. The first one, geez, I don't remember what the first one was again. We did a bit of, I think it was turnaround planning stuff, but it was more of an intro. I think we spent about half the episode introducing ourselves and explaining what we do, and kind of fumbled through that one. Didn't really know what we were doing yet, but I think that was turnaround planning, and then the piping life cycle we jumped into right away, which I think was good. It was a technical mini series type of thing, with some stories thrown in there, and people seem to like that one. If you got an interest in the piping world, that's a pretty good one. We covered a lot of things there: fabrication, install, inspection. Kind of the whole life cycle. So it's hard to do in only a couple hours, but that one was good. As far as technical ones, wasn't too dry.
No, it wasn't too bad. We were starting to get our feet a little wetter. The first one, although that is our highest downloaded episode, like I still cringe at it because it's like we just started out and we still a little hesitant on talking and kind of feeling out this whole situation. But I think it wasn't bad, but I feel bad for people just like listening to it and like, what the hell are these guys doing? Like some of our later episodes, I think around episode maybe 5, 6, and 7 is when we started actually getting pretty comfortable with it. And I would say is kind of when we were making something people would actually enjoy listening to.
Yeah, like I think right around the time we invited Ryan in for
Yeah.
a couple sessions there, really broke through the ice there and kind of fell into our groove. I think
Yeah.
I think we were kind of getting into our groove then, and then just having another guy in to, take away the microphones and what we're doing here and just make it more of a, shop talk type of thing. I think that really, really helped kind of guide it to what it is now.
Yeah, I agree. And then, like, as we kind of just alluded to, episodes 5, 6, and 7 were kind of all about the turnaround we initially talked about in episode 1. And kind of, I think we were doing turnaround planning at that time. So we were kind of, our intent was to kind of talk about turnaround planning, I think, in episode 1, and then to kind of fill that void until the actual execution of the turnaround. We thought we'd do the piping life cycles, and then 5, 6, and 7 was kind of like the follow through of the planning and the actual execution of the turnarounds. And then episode 8, we jumped into the repairs and stuff, because we kind of figured, after we did all the planning and then the execution of the turnaround, we should probably talk about executing repairs and stuff that we found in the turnarounds.
Yeah, and it was almost a turnaround life cycle as well, if you want to look at it that way. We went from the planning stage to the kind of the pre-turnaround stuff, into the execution, into the post, a bit of the turnover stuff you get, that type of thing, and then kind of into repairs. Even though repairs are part of a turnaround, a lot of time they're known. I think I'll have to re-listen to that episode, but I can't remember if we went into like just repairs in general, or if that was like a turnaround thing, or like unexpected repairs. Probably a bit of everything all mixed together. I think Matt helped us out with that one, so that was another one of our guests we had along the way. And then actually Matt helped us out with the one after that as well too, the certs one, which I'll have to look at the numbers. I don't know if that was one of the higher download ones or not, but I think for myself that is one of the more useful ones, I would say, specifically for people new or interested in the industry, or mid-level people looking to advance, or just even seasoned people that don't have a lot of certifications and didn't care to venture down that road too much. I thought it was a good kind of overview of not every cert, obviously, because there's lots of them, but most of the ones we kind of run into on a jobly basis, I guess you could say. Yeah,
the ones people want to see on your resume anyway, and
those ones.
Kind of just how to familiarize yourself with them. This episode actually surprised me. Number 10, watch out for the claw. We tried to talk about how to like get jobs, and talking about working for companies where you're just kind of a number, even as a contractor. That one, I think we could have maybe done a better job on, but I think we also explained it pretty, like, there's not really much to it. You find a job application, you apply, you get the job, and they chuck you in vessels and expect a report afterwards, right? But that's probably, that is a listener question, actually, we are going to dive into here in a couple minutes.
Yeah, I think that claw episode is one that maybe it'll draw the interest of people that do claw jobs, and maybe people that have no idea what we're talking about. And then that bit in the middle maybe could care less about that. But I don't know. I thought that would be a interesting topic, or it was a fun one to talk about. It's a good metaphor anyways of getting plucked by the claw. It's very much how those jobs go. But episode 10, if you're hearing this and you're curious.
Yeah, episode 11, we tried to touch on the pandemic kind of thing and how everyone started working from home, and kind of touched on that. That one wasn't too bad. I think people enjoyed it, but also I think we could have elaborated a little bit more on some other stuff, but I really am sick of it. I don't really want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, that was getting late in the year and we're well into it.
Yeah.
That one, I think, drew in a few new listeners just because it was a bit of a different topic, and oddly enough got some positive feedback from some people that haven't commented on any of the other ones. So I think it touched a few different listeners, if you will, maybe a different audience, but a bit of a different topic. Didn't have it wasn't super technical or anything like some of the other ones, but it was very much related to our work and how it affected it, and the industry as a whole, really, right?
Yeah, you're right about that for sure. And you want to go with these two next two? I know they were your favorites.
Oh, the cake episodes 12 and 13. So that was our ASME Section 9 review. This was definitely the most technical one yet. It was not quite as entertaining or as fun as some of the other ones, but I think a lot of good information packed into only a couple hours. A lot of page turning.
Yeah, oh jeez.
By somebody.
The steam was coming out of my ears on that one.
But yeah, that one, I would say if you're one of these people that is getting tasked to review welding procedures and you don't have a real good grasp on it, there's worse ways to spend 3 hours of your life than listening to those 2 episodes. And it's a lot of good information. I really like the way we ended up outlining it. We kind of do all these episodes on the fly to some degree anyways, but I do like the format we came out with that one, how to review Section 9. We pulled in some construction codes, did a couple of case studies, some client spec stuff. So it's all really good info. And again, for those people that are uncomfortable with welding procedure review but getting pulled into that type of thing, it's it's not a all-inclusive, you're going to know everything after listening to these 2 by any means, but it's definitely a good start. And we laid out some good ways to go through welding procedures, which I think are helpful, using those tables and just kind of how to navigate Section 9 specifically. So it's a good one to listen to for sure.
Yeah. And then kind of a surprise episode with off-spray inspection for number 14, talking about drone inspections and the use of drones just in the plant and using them for internals, externals, and stuff like that. That one actually did a lot better than, not that I thought it wouldn't do as well, but I was actually surprised on the feedback on that one. That actually got probably some of the most feedback out of all of them. It was a great conversation. I was pretty nervous. Like, that was our first quote unquote like interview one. So it's pretty neat to get the interview. I wish you could have been there.
Yeah, it was interview style for sure, right? So it's a little different. Like our other couple guests we had, it was more of here's what we want to talk about, and everybody just kind of chime in. Definitely a shop talk type of thing, where the one with Cortland was to some degree as well, but it was definitely a more of an interview. I think because he has an expertise in a field that we don't, so it's just set up to, we want to know some stuff about it. So yeah, it's just perfect way to interview somebody, right? And I think a lot of other people do too. And then that I think pulled in some more listeners as well too, right?
Yeah, and especially the listeners that we do have that are employee inspection roles, where they can actually leverage this technology to assist them in their day-to-day stuff. So I think it was pretty good and a little bit eye-opening. And oddly enough, we landed a couple other interviews with some interesting people that will show some more technologies that people can leverage to help with the inspection roles, and I think they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah, it's looking like a promising year or season 2, however you want to look at it. We got some interest of people that want to come talk with us, not having to beg people like we did last year, so that's cool. A couple got, I want to say 2 of them are fields that we are not experts in, so that's always nice. We like to venture off a little bit into other avenues that are very much integrity related, but just different avenues. We won't tease too much about who they are, what the topics are just yet. And then we do have some more interest as well from other colleagues, so we'll have some more of those shop talk type of episodes again throughout the year. So it's looking pretty promising, actually. It's going to be a full month or 2 getting rolling here with some of these episodes, so that's good. We're not going to be struggling for what am I struggling with here now?
Struggling to get guests in?
Yeah, or just to fill airtime, right?
Yeah.
Lots to talk about. I mean, with the guests, it's easy, right? Let them just do all the talking. Here's what's his name, and go.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. Like, people were eager to come on and talk, but it's also hard to try and get engaging topics. So, I don't know. Should we kick it off? I think that was a pretty good little recap of the year.
Yeah. No, that's not good. That's not good. No, that's good. I think I'm glad we did the little episode recap. Good idea there. We kind of have our whiteboard all flustered up. Today is our first episode in a while, so we forgot how to do the whiteboard. But
yeah, we're not drinking today either.
Maybe that's it. Yeah, that's the problem. It's too early or something. But yes, I'm happy with how we did that little episode recap. If you are joining us for the first time for whatever reason, feel free to go back. They're not in any specific order per se, other than maybe the piping ones. I would listen to those in order. But yeah, that's kind of the stuff we talked about last year. Should we get into the questions? Should we recap our work years a little bit? What do you want to tackle next here?
Yeah, let's get into the questions.
Okay. Then maybe we'll wrap it up with kind of how our years went a little bit. And
we can start with that. How was your year?
Well, I spent most of it with you, so it's terrible.
I don't blame you.
Well, I think it was like a lot of people's, and speaking to our industry, I'm not going to group the whole country or province in this, but I think it was like a lot of people's where we're all geared up for something in the spring. We're talking work-wise, and then that all kind of fairly suddenly got pulled out from under us. A lot of people weren't fortunate enough to stay on anywhere, whether that's a big deal or not. But anyways, there was essentially not a lot of work in the springtime. There was a lot of uncertainty on what was going on. I know some of the turnarounds took off later in the spring. I didn't get involved in any of those myself. I just stayed doing a work from home type of turnaround planning on what I was currently doing. So for myself, the spring turnaround I was supposed to be on actually ran through the summer. So I ended up doing a summer turnaround, which isn't the most ideal because that's when it's nice here for a very brief amount of time and you want to enjoy that, not be working in coveralls. So did a summer turnaround, a bit of a longer one, 5-6 weeks, something like that. Ended up doing actually two more after that. So I ended up doing kind of a typical fall routine myself. Get into September was a turnaround, did a smaller one after that, and then a couple of small little inspection jobs, and then kind of back into a turnaround planning type of thing again. So the second half of the year, minus the summer turnaround, was quite typical. First half of the year was like something I've never really seen before in my life. That was a first, and hopefully a last, but we'll see.
Yeah, like you said, I was attached to your hip for most of the year, so you were having fun. It was actually seemed overly busy near the end of the year, especially jumping from turnaround to turnaround, and then finally getting home and getting back into that planning gig from home was almost like a vacation. Like it was a relief, right? But then
at first, nice little calm, and then
you start struggling with the mental anguish of being at home almost 24 hours a day. And and what the heck, almost going to the facility or whatever is a nice break, even though you got to get up a little bit earlier and drive and yada, yada, yada. But you miss those little routine things where you'd go get your coffee and listen to Manwatch Required on the drive in.
Obviously,
right?
What else?
Yeah. So it was. It seemed a little condensed, but it was nice to have that break, and then obviously the break around the holidays was really nice.
Yeah, that's always great. I look forward to that. Actually, on that topic, this year, I had big plans to go to all the World Junior Hockey games because they're in Edmonton, our hometown or close to. So I had tickets to all the games, and I had big plans to just, go to a game, then go for lunch, go to the afternoon game, kind of just live downtown for 2 weeks. But obviously with the situation going on, there's no fans there, so I had to watch them at home, unfortunately. So I was pretty disappointing. Still, obviously had some time off and stayed at home relaxed, but man, not quite the plans I had anyways for this winter break. Next year will be better.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it was good. It was nice to kind of poke around the house a little bit and enjoy it, even though we had some different challenges. Me specifically dealing with the Manwatch Required studios and trying to figure out what to do with this space here because it was a pain in the ass. That's another topic, though. So
we'll just put a pin in that one for now.
Well, I try not to associate what we're doing here with the other business just because for the sake of the other business.
Don't want to bring it down.
Yeah. So I guess getting into some of the listener questions we had this year, we've had multiple inquiries about people and just trying to actually getting into it. We tried to cover that with the Claw Job episode 10 of season 1, but it seems like it's still a little bit of elusive issue on trying to get these jobs, and even, trying to get hired on for turnarounds or other things, or just developing opportunities for yourself to grow your skill set, and even getting into, I think specifically it was making the jump from being an NDE tech into the visual side of it, and or from the QC side into the API visual side of it as well, which is similar, I guess. But, I think the QC side of it is you have a really good understanding of fabrication and how things are supposed to go. And then the NDE side of it, I think I guess in turnaround situations, you obviously have both of them, but I feel like the NDE guys get a little bit more exposure to the internal side of things, and kind of the in-process side of it.
Yeah, if we're speaking specifically turnarounds, I would say yes.
Yeah.
You're probably right there. There is, if we're going to talk about how to get into this, like you alluded to, and that has been a question from multiple people. There is kind of, and this isn't all encompassing either, but there's kind of like, I want to say 3 avenues. You can start with essentially nothing, or a trade ticket, or just a related background. From there, you can get a CWB1, get into the QC type of thing. Instead of that, you can get into NDT. It's like a mini trade as well. And we covered that in the certs episode. I think we went into some of the NDT tickets. So you can get into that, kind of down that path. Or you can go to NATE, take like one of those 2-year programs, or even engineering or something like that too. And then from there, a lot of these sites will hire you directly, and then you just start learning right there. So you kind of jump right into those owner user API type of roles. Why don't we start with, why don't we just take these one at a time? Like let's say the CWB1 route, because we kind of both went that way. So it's probably easy to talk about. I mean, from there, nowadays it's kind of hard because the work's a little more scarce than it used to be. But when it was busy, it was relatively easy to get a job doing this. So you get your CWB1. At that point, you're not going to know a whole lot other than what you know, like as a tradesman or something like that. But you're not going to know a lot about inspection or QC or anything like that. So you can, at the time, you could get a job pretty easily in a shop or with a company doing turnarounds or something like that. And then the idea is you'd shadow like somebody more senior, start doing QC work, visual inspection as far as like welding, coordinate NDE, those type of things. So you kind of get into that world. From there, you can get exposure to, and now this is if you're interested in getting into the API world, you can get exposure to that. The best way I find is just networking and doing turnarounds. You're going to be working with those people. So when you get high enough up the ranks doing this QC type of work, you're going to be doing ITPs and things like that. You're going to be working with the API guys for approvals and turnovers and whatnot. So you start building those relationships, and then a lot of them are staff people, but a lot of them are contractors as well, employed very much the same as you are with the contract companies doing the repairs. So that's kind of a good way to develop those relationships, just see who they work for, who their network is, what companies hire those type of roles. And then as you get the years and experience in that, you can start getting those tickets and just kind of expand your network is really kind of how it works if you're going down that route. What would you say to that, Frank?
Yeah, actually, I did put a lot of thought into this, and kind of how I got into it. I don't know if we alluded it in a previous episode or not, but like definitely having a network of people that you can call and ask for work, and or get called upon for work. I think the biggest key is personal drive. Like I'm
especially when you're new too, right?
Yeah.
When you're a little more seasoned and you got a big, strong network, you tend to get a lot of calls from people. But when you're breaking in, especially, or breaking from one to the other, you definitely want to be persistent and have that drive and kind of be looking around.
Yeah, because essentially how I got it, I already started with the essentials again. Hey,
nice.
How I, like, even my first turnaround, like I wanted to get onto it, and they told me no because I didn't have enough experience. Right at that point, I had just freshly gotten my 510, and I had my CWB level 1 at the time, and they're like, you don't have enough experience to be jumping around in vessels and doing full assessments without without someone who who has a in-service thing to, one, sign off your reports and review them, and two, we don't want you slowing anybody down, right? So I offered to go work for free for a couple of days, which sounds ridiculous, but like I just wanted like in-service turnaround experience so bad. I said, I'll come work for like a few days for free just to kind of get the experience and some site exposure.
Yeah.
Right. And what ended up happening is they do what they do with all the new guys is I was looking after PSVs and like bolt ups. Right.
Sure.
Because with the QC background, that tied in very nicely. And then also, okay, enough to just go poke around and check nameplates and verify set pressures and stuff like that. And that actually, I busted my ass doing that. I made sure I kept a detailed record of everything I looked at. I tried to write concise reports. And by the end of it, I actually landed a embedded contractor role through that. And that lasted 1.5 years. And through that, I got to go to different facilities throughout Canada just through that one company based off just doing it. But you obviously have to keep up that level of intensity because they expect you to work like that, right? So that would be something, let's say specifically for an NDE tech trying to who has some API tickets that wants to break into the API side, do the extra little bit of work. And being visual guys, I can attest to this, and Scott, I'm sure you can too. If you get a good report from an NDT tech or NDE tech, whatever you want to say, you typically try and get that same tech to try and do the rest of your jobs because you develop a trust just by even looking at that report. So the more concise information you can even put on a UT scan report or a MAG report or something like that, orientations, smaller details, stuff like that, it helps develop a rapport with people who can actually get you into those positions. So go that extra mile. I don't know how many frickin' times you walk into the NDE trailer as a visual guy, and what's the first thing you see? You see 18 frickin' people with either feet up on the desk staring at a screen or like people sleeping with their head down, right?
Oh, come on. You're making this up.
Don't get me wrong. There's times in the turnaround where that trailer is empty and everybody's hauling ass and like flat out doing their job and doing what they're supposed to do. Yeah. But on that downtime, go to the in-service trailer or go talk to one of the resident guys and be like, hey, can I shadow you on an inspection? Show initiative, show drive. And if you do it with the right people, those are the people that are going to build trust in you and have you come back and actually give you those opportunities because it looks like you want those opportunities. And if you genuinely want them, you'll get them. As cheesy as that like kind of sounds, I don't know. Like, would you agree? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's that or you work for free like Frank does and you get hired everywhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I work for foods and half smoked cigarettes, right?
I heard actually not too long ago on a job, one of the Holder guys, a saying or quote or something, if you will, is he said, whenever I'm on a job, I always give them what they ask of me plus a little more.
Yeah.
He said, I don't give them everything I got. I give them what they ask plus a little more. Because you don't want to give them everything you got because now that's the bar now.
Yeah.
But if you do everything they ask and a little bit more, everybody's going to be pretty happy with that, right?
Yeah. And once you get exposure to doing these types of things, like you'll know the processes and kind of what's expected next, right? Or even this is going to lead into the next kind of thing is you're going to figure out what the actual process, okay, they did a visual, I did my NDE, what's the next step? Okay, it's most likely going to be repair or nothing. So what can I do to set the next inspection up? I hate saying for success, but like what's something that I can do to give the most concise information to make the next inspection a lot easier and help that go along. And once you start doing that, you're going to build value just through the work that you've done. And it, like Scott said, going from like doing something good to doing something great really isn't a far jump. It could be an extra 10 minutes. Sometimes it's an extra an hour, but it's going to distinguish you from the other people doing the same job as you and give you that leg up. And that's kind of how I feel like I've done stuff. Like I've always made sure that, okay, this is what I'm doing. What's the next step and how can I plan for it? Because not only are you going to execute what you've planned for, there's going to be the follow-up afterwards, and you might as well prepare yourself or prepare the next person for that, and they're going to appreciate that and find, hey, working with this person's actually pretty easy, so let's bring them back and have them do other work. And that's kind of my mentality on it. Plus I work for free, so they always like that as well, right?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of good points there. And I know for myself, like if I see names that I'm familiar with, and now this isn't talking about like the close friends and that we have fun with. I'm not talking about that group. I'm talking about the people that you just bump into, like NDE techs that you use, or QC people that you run into, or even maybe fellow visual inspectors too, whatever it is. But you see those names that you recognize that did like a really good job for you, so you're like really excited to have them work with you again. Or you see them like part of the same team as you now, and like, oh yeah, I remember working with this guy when he's a UT hand or something, and he did great work, right? So that's kind of how all that falls in. And whether you realize it or not, the QC guy, the NDE guy, and the API guy, they all know a little bit about each other's job. Like the API guy is going to have a look at it first. The QC guy is going to probably look at it next once the repairs are done. The NDE guy is going to get in there. Maybe the QC guy again, probably the API guy after that. So you're all kind of interconnected there. So when you're jumping from one to the other, you have a good idea of what the other guy's already doing. So it is kind of set up that there's a couple different intersections there, if you will, to go from, QC to NDE to API, or vice versa, any direction you want, right? Not that they're progressive in any means, but it is it might be easier than you think. It's just the hardest part is building that network, and then, like Frank said, going the above and beyond and just getting recognized for that. But it's the biggest thing is the network, which I guess kind of leads to the other avenue, is where you can get hired by one of these places right out of school, which that's a little different scenario, because now you're not turnaround hopping per se. You're in some instances working at one place your whole life. So, which is good and bad, I guess. I don't want to comment on that too much, but that's just a different avenue, I guess. And a lot of those people too they'll come out of school and do a few jobs before they pick one of those or get hired on as a staff person or whatever it is. But that's just a different avenue to look at. So if you're really new and you have the time to go to school, and that's a thought of yours too, there is that option too, right? You can get a technical degree in a couple of years and hop right into a staff position somewhere, if it all lines up for you that way.
Yeah, I would say the same philosophy applies. Like you and I have both been tasked with taking what are they, interns or engineers in training, EITs, out into the plant to familiarize with them, and you instantly pick up on who does apply a little bit above and beyond, and who is genuinely interested in learning and trying to do the best job that they can, as opposed to someone who's could be quite literally picking their nose while you're walking through the plant with them, right? And not giving a crap because, well, I've got my degree and now I just need to do my time in to get my stamp, right? Or my tickets, right? Or whatever it is. So, it's picked up upon either way. Well, geez, I had some to follow up. Another thing that you could do, and like I said, I'm pretty nerdy at this, but if you are an NDE tech and you have your ticket, but you haven't had the opportunity to like full out do inspections while you're in a vessel or something, do a personal little quick inspection of it. I'm not saying do a full internal and like waste time, but like you got to crawl through most of the stuff anyway. Take a peek around, see what you're looking at. Look, read up on the before you go in, right? Obviously you're going in there. If you got mag, you got a cracking mechanism you're looking for. Okay, well, why are we looking for cracking? What is this, right? And obviously,
because the RBI said so.
Yeah, RBI said.
What else is there?
Everybody knows 510 is a thing. So flip through 510 and find out. Oh, well, this reference is 571. Okay, and then I can flip through that. And there's.
What's the pressure vessel one? Is it 572? The like one that has the inspection methods and whatnot.
Yeah, I think 574 is piping.
Yeah, we might be off on the numbers. You can look it up yourself. But if you're especially if you're really new, or let's say you're one of those related disciplines, that's a good document to have a read through, and it tells you what to do, like how to inspect things, what to expect to find in specific types of equipment. And then the 571 you said is a good one too.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a little harder to grasp if you're, let's say, trying to break into it. You might not understand or how to apply a lot of those things, but it's a good starting point. And yeah, the 572 is really good. Just good direction on basically what to do and what to expect and how to inspect it.
Yeah, they're 572 and 574 are the recommended practices for inspection of piping and pressure equipment.
Yeah.
Right. Another key thing to take out of those is verbiage. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. For your reports. Right. And like we alluded to in our report writing one, I think that was like number 8 or something. But
yeah, it was in that 5 to 8 somewhere along there.
When you're doing an NDE report or any type of report or document you're turning over to your client and or to put into the system, if you're a resident inspector, use the verbiage that's either on the drawings or industry verbiage, because you don't want to just make crap up and then the next guy's going to read it and then they're going to be like, what the heck is this? It's concise and get to the point. Try not to wax on too much. And I know some of my reports go.
You should take some of your own advice, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say they're thorough, but keep the verbiage simple.
Definitely thorough.
And not simple, but keep it to the industry standard and be specific on things. And that's also gonna push you a little bit ahead. Asking questions as well. Like if you can have the opportunity to shadow somebody, say on a downtime, like say they do have a bunch of techs under one discipline and you kind of have some ass time in the trailer. Like I said, wander over, talk to the client guys and say, hey, if you're going to go do anything exciting, I don't have too much time. I'll bring my yoke. I'll bring my UT kit. Can I come with you next time you go look at something? I just kind of want to learn. And I guess 99% of the time, most people are willing to. And if you do get that person who doesn't want to show you, you most likely don't want to learn from them anyway.
Yeah, that or they don't know what they're doing either, and they're too much pride to really admit that. So, you can just leave that alone, I guess. But what was I going to say? Oh, same philosophy, I guess, too. If you're breaking into the API world, if that's what you're after, and you end up on one of these claw jobs or something like that, try to find one of the guys that seems like he knows what he's doing and follow him around a little bit. You're likely going to be stuck on PSVs and piping with Frank anyways, but if you want to get inside, do some internals or whatever, team up with one of those more seasoned guys that's willing to help you out. Best way to learn is to figure it out, jump right in.
Yep, and I think we really beat this one to death, but
really. I'm gonna say we should do the old let's get going here. Next question.
Yeah, but other than that, take personal time to study. You'll sit there and learn the cheat codes to any video game that you're playing right now. Like, why not do something that could actually advance yourself? I know video games actually, I guess, pay now, but not as much as what we're doing. Well, I shouldn't say that.
It's probably significantly more.
Yeah. But take the time to learn, and, you can just search the internet for specific documents, and if you can get your hands on them and read them, then you'll have actually concise questions to ask somebody who may know those answers. And then they'll see that you're willing to learn and start sharing more information with you. So
on that topic, I would say be careful what you look at too online. I would say the best thing to do is find what the references are, being, recommended practice or code documents, and then find it in there yourself and see what it says.
Yeah.
That's the best way. Because then next time you know where to find it, how to get back there. And then that's actually what's in the law too, not somebody's opinion or somebody's interpretation.
Yeah. Good point. Okay. The horse is dead. We can move on.
I think so. Yeah.
Where do you want to start next? Do you want to start, should we do the top one or the one below it?
Geez, which one's the top one?
Package review or the jurisdictional limits? They tie into each other. We're just scratching our heads on where to place this next one.
I don't know. Should we do the package review one, I guess, quickly, and then kind of, let's do the fitting one. Are we running out of time already?
No, we all the time in the world. I just hope it's engaging enough. I was just surprised to see how much we waxed on about that.
Let's do the the fitting question here. I think that's a interesting one, and we can probably get the point across pretty quickly. So, to sum it up, the question is, where are the limits? Where's the line drawn in the sand, jurisdiction-wise? And there really isn't one. But when it comes to fittings, so we talked about this pretty extensively in the piping life cycle one, probably the first episode of that series, I'm assuming where it was.
So should I click? Are you talking about fitting modification or just fittings in general?
Yeah, so where I'm going with this is the question is around when are you modifying a fitting and how does that apply? And I think, did you have something to add before we?
No, I just wanted to make sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what the question was. It was, when is it considered modifying a fitting? When is it considered just part of the registered piping design? And it really doesn't matter. And the fitting design from the manufacturer is all that matters. Well, go ahead.
Sorry. Maybe we should kind of clarify what we mean by modifying a fitting. So in these specific questions, you could say like cutting or drilling a hole in a blind flange and adding an OLET, cutting an elbow to a custom angle, right? Instead of taking like a 90-degree elbow and cutting it to a 70, possibly even taking a blind flange and turning it into something like an injection quill. This is kind of what Scott's going to be leading into.
Yeah, and the kind of question around it, and there's a lot of questions about this all the time, is, so if you're doing, say, any one of those three things, is that considered modifying a fitting, and does that have to be registered as whatever you've made there now? And I would say the quick answer is no, unless you're doing that and putting it on the shelf and through a production line and intend on selling them like that. If in that case, then yes, that would be considered that, and it would have to be registered. So the good way to separate these is just think about the mills making these. They have a design registration for those specific fittings or valves or whatever it is they're making, and they pump those all out, and they come with, in our case, a CRN number. In other parts of the world, it'll be something different. But they'll come with that. If you get that and you attach that to your piping system, let's say the custom elbow angle, for example, you have to cut that to 70 degrees, like Frank said, because that's what your isometric calls for. You're not making a custom fitting that you have to reapply a new design for to get acceptance. That's all part of the piping design that's already been submitted and registered. So you're basically just building the isometric. Same thing with the blind flange with like the vent on it. That one gets a little interesting because it's small and it's movable and you can carry it around. People like to think that that's its own fitting now. It's not. It's a bunch of fittings that you've welded together, and it's part of a piping system that it gets bolted to, which is registered and has its own PP number. So no, it's not that conglomeration of fittings that you weld together is not like some odd category H thing that you have to register now. So that's kind of where the line is drawn there, if there is a line. I think that's kind of what the question was. And injection quills is another interesting one. Do you have a take on that before? I have a story I'll share with that one, but do you want to jump in before I?
Well, it's pretty much the same as you just kind of summarized. Like, unless it's something that's being fabricated specifically to be sold as an injection quill by a manufacturer, it wouldn't have to be registered. If it's designed like that, like Scott mentioned, on your isometric or on your drawings, right? You're going to have an isometric. It's going to be designed and it's going to be registered so you can fabricate it. Like the best thing that you said there was like, it's just a bunch of fittings welded together. Right. Even though you can move it around or whatever, it'd be foolish to start throwing them in different spots if you didn't need them to be there, right? They're designed for a specific use in one location. But yeah, that is something. But on the other hand, you can have designed and engineered injection quills, which you can buy off the shelf that bolt in. Yep. But those will have their own CRN number, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we mean by design registration. So like if you're in the shop, the best example I think we used when we were talking before was the flush out tee or something like that, where it had a blind flange on the end of it with a nipple valve assembly for venting or draining.
Right. It's
on your isometric, right? And what if, say, it was corroded? you would have to refabricate it to replace it. It's not like you're going to go and re-register all those things and put them, get a new design registration just to put your blind flange back on your flush T, right?
Yeah, and you don't see a lot of mills pumping out a blind OLED nipple valve assemblies.
No.
They will make all those things individually, yes, but not as that assembly. So it really comes down to what your intended purpose is. If you're building these things to put on the shelf to hope somebody will buy, well, now you're into a different conversation. But if it's something that's part of the drawing, part of the registered piping system, then no, there's nothing to worry about there. Injection quills are something I've ran into a couple times, and one case in particular, we actually looked at a manufacturer that built them. I think they made it all out of like Swedlock stuff. So it was, and a variety of sizes and materials and whatnot. And they had them all registered as category H fittings, which is fine. And it's probably what you should do because they, just manufactured a bunch of these on an assembly line and for the intent of selling them to whoever wanted them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the case of, say you're at a piping shop or something, or on site, whatever it is, and your drawing shows an injection quill and all the dimensions and the weld size and everything and what fittings to use and grades and that, you just build that and that goes into your piping system and it is registered with the piping system. That, in that instance, it doesn't require its own registration. And a good story I'll share about that is a job I did a few years ago. This is one of the few times I ran into these. We had built one of these on-site, injection quill, nothing too fancy, and installed it. I think that was most of the scope. We might have done the piping system too. I can't remember. But anyways, that was part of the scope or the entire scope, whatever it was. So we built this thing, provided the turnover package, hydro tested it, did all this good stuff, installed it. And then about a month after the turnaround, I got a call while I was eating dinner at a restaurant with my family, and I had to talk to a room of people on site on a conference call and explain to them why it didn't have to be registered and basically what we've just been spouting off the last few minutes and how it all worked. And then it was kind of everybody's silent nod of agreeing at the end. Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. So there is a lot of confusion around that. And I think what's confusing about it is you can do it either way, but just kind of remember what the intended purpose is. The registration is really if you're manufacturing an assembly of these things to distribute. It's not really intended to handcuff you every time you air quote modify something.
Yeah. The most flack I've actually seen this on was cutting elbows, 90-degree elbows down to a different
that one
angle.
It's funny how many people get excited about that one, but why? You had a piping designer design that isometric. They know what they're doing. They know what angle they have there. They know what flow they're going to achieve. That's where the design is taken care of. It's not so much in that individual piece you've cut in half or whatever.
I got a possible question here. I don't hope it's not a curveball. So what if we had, say, a designed injection quill, right? It was a CRN number, but then the owner user, like it was a manufactured injection quill.
Okay. So one you've purchased or something.
One we've purchased. Right. Say it failed, and then the owner user then wanted to fabricate their own. Do we still have to go through design survey on that and get, maybe not design survey, sorry, do we still have to register that now, even though it's going to be a bunch of fittings that we're going to put into the piping system that's registered?
Interesting question. It would depend on a couple of things, I would say. So if, I'm assuming at one point this was a new injection quill that wasn't there. So do you have an isometric that shows an injection quill there, and then is there a detail showing how to build it? Then I would say no, you don't have to register. You can just go ahead and build it as per the bill of materials and the details, and it is registered with that piping system. The one you purchased that just happened to fit in there as well, that was registered because of the way it was manufactured and distributed as somewhat of an assembly. It didn't really have to be either, but it's just because of the process that it was a factory or mill, if you will, pumped this thing out, or a couple thousand of them, and we're selling them. So that's kind of where that difference is. Now, say if you're going to repair that registered category H quill that you bought, what kind of trouble could you be in there? Now, does your repair contractor have to have category H on their cap?
I don't know.
I think H is still the oddball one. They might have shuffled those numbers around, but sorry if we're alluding you to
I just trying to
pressure
say
gauges or something different. But
opened up a can of worms here. I don't know. It wouldn't H follow H. I think H is just like,
I thought that was the oddball stuff.
It's considered piping almost. It's like a bunch of H could also be like a pressure vessel made out of piping though.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't want to get too much into this without the chart in front of me. But
yeah.
But there is the one for whatever doesn't fit into all these other letters is this.
Yeah. Would have to be on their cap. Well, I'm gonna go with yes. I'd be looking for it anyway, but I'd actually have to look into it. But I would, off the top of my head, say yeah, they would have to have some sort of authorization to repair fittings or fabricate them.
Yeah, I would say so. If you bought that thing that happened to be registered for whatever odd reason, and you knew that was the case, and you were repairing it, then yeah, you would have to have that on your cap to be able to do that.
Yeah, and that's as simple as you can even go on the ABSA website and ask for your repair organization's AQP number, and you can search it and see exactly what they're certified to actually repair and or fabricate. So that's all it takes, and you would definitely want to do that prior to issuing the work scope to them, because you're gonna get some slaps on the wrist from ABSA and so are they if they start doing stuff they're not authorized to do.
Well, it's a two-way street there. The repair company should know what they're capable of doing before they take on the work, and the owner should also know what they're capable of doing before they approve the work. So yeah, definitely a two-way street there. But yeah, you can even search it by name too. So if you don't know if they're new to, if they're not on your site yet or something, for example, you can look their name up just to see what you're getting into. Like, oh wow, these guys can't do half of our equipment. That's great.
No, that was a good counter question. But yeah, definitely check into that. And a lot of places, like especially some of maybe the smaller repair organizations, they might just be eager for the work and be like, yeah, we can fix that. But Scott's right. They should understand what they are and are not able to do for you or for your company or client or however you want to word that.
Well, if they pay their quality control people appropriately, then they're going to know that. So
it's all about pay. Okay.
Well, it's kind of how the world works, isn't it?
I guess, yeah. Okay. So with all that being said, that's going to lead into our package review, I guess, because you may be reviewing a repair package and or a fabrication package of one of these said items that other people may be under the opinion may need to be registered and or have a design registration. So when you're looking through that, make sure you got the right drawings, you got all the engineer stamping, and there is actual documentation showing that. You might even get if it is a fitting, you're going to get a U1 or manufacturer's data report for those.
The U1 would be
for a vessel.
But yeah, you could get a registration. I wouldn't really die on the hill for that one. A lot of times you aren't going to see those, but a lot of times you will. It'll be with the MTR package that they've supplied. But that's a hit and miss thing, and that's something you really got to ask for in the beginning if that's what you want. And I would say so more for new construction. Say you're getting a bunch of piping fabricated. Yeah. That's a better chance that'll be in there. If you're cutting in a valve or something, maybe you won't see that. It just all depends on what's provided.
Yeah, with the valve, though, you would kind of want to see what it is anyway.
Sure, maybe that wasn't a good example.
But you might get an AB83 or something like that, depending on what it is, especially if it's a part of a piping system, right? That'd be something to actually probably look out for.
Yeah, well, sorry, MTR for sure. Like, you're going to know the material, but yeah, the fitting design registration and even the ABSA acceptance, you may not always see that. So, I wouldn't I wouldn't die on that one unless that's something that you really needed. But if you did, that should have really been outlined at the start.
Mm-hmm. Some other questions we got, kind of, which, like I said, just tied into that, was kind of package review. Always remember that there's going to be a client kind of procedure on what they want repaired, and then there's going to be an ITP for that work scope, and you can always use your ITP as a checklist, because it's a checklist for the work. It should be a checklist for reviewing the work to make sure everything's there, right? Start at the top, make sure, and just work your way down. I think that's the simplest way to kind of explain it. Try not to get overwhelmed by even some of the amount of documents, because some of the stuff is like thousands of pages depending on what you're doing, but most of them are just MTRs and stuff like that, especially for exchangers, and you're just going crazy.
Yeah, that's a good point with the ITP checklist thing. I was going to steer it there if you didn't. Use it as a checklist, because that's what it is. And that's where, geez, I keep bumping into the microphone. That's where it's sometimes nice to have all these different review points, especially like one of the big thicker ones like Frank mentioned, because that way you can review down to a certain point, and then if you get busy and have to do something else, you can sign those review points, and then you know you're that far. Then you can revisit it, and it just saves a lot of like re-review. And then a lot of the nice ones will have like a checklist at the front, more of a doc control thing. That's a good thing to check for yourself too. Okay, they said all the stuff's in here. Let's make sure it is. And same with the ITP. You know, you said you're going to do 10% mag or whatever it is. Let's make sure we did that. Okay, reports are in there. You want to review your reports for completeness, for signatures. You want to make sure those people are qualified, make sure welders are qualified. There's a lot to talk about here, and I think one of our guests we have lined up will have a lot to say about this too. So I'm hoping to really jump into this one for like a whole hour.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't know what else to say about it without talking for a really long time about it. What else do you got on the?
No, I think it sounds simple just sitting here talking to it. And of course you can get overwhelmed while you're in the heat of it, but you know, systems are set up and you just got to follow the steps and kind of walk through it. And, you know, whenever my wife and I do something like crazy or has the complex, like I always just look at her and, you know, we're eating an elephant one bite at a time, right? Just be simple.
Yeah.
Do it that way. Like just tackle it slowly and go through it. Obviously, if you're doing package review, you don't want to take too much time, but you want to be thorough and you want to make sure you get everything right. And again, ask questions. You got your QC guy there. He spent all that time preparing it for you. Like you should be fairly willing to say, oh, you know, this is here, this is there. Or maybe I did miss that. Actually, I have that report here. It was, you know, shuffled under some other papers or whatever. But ask questions if you're not quite sure, and they'll walk you through it because they want you to sign it at the end of the day. And, you know, they'll make sure you have what you need to fulfill your role as a package reviewer. And sometimes you're doing it blindly too. So you might need to make sure all the like blind package review is sometimes more frustrating than knowing the work.
Well, it is. And you really shouldn't be certifying repairs that you didn't see, but that's another argument we can leave for another time. But that's probably the best point out of all that is if you don't know, ask somebody that does know. Not everybody can be an expert on welding, heat treating, NDE, you know, all these different things, especially if you are only involved in a small portion of it, or as the owner inspector, you're likely only, you know, the visual really. You weren't involved in a lot of that other stuff. That was the QC group doing it. So
yeah,
they should be the most knowledgeable ones about it. Ask them about it. Most of the time it's, you just don't know how they have it laid out, or you can't see it. They can explain it to you, or something's just not in there. Like they forgot to throw a report in there or something, right? I mean, a lot of times things get missed and it's bad news, but that's not always the case, right? It's usually just a matter of like, oh no, that's actually in this section, or, oh, sorry, we forgot to put that in there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's usually something pretty simple to fix it. So, and I was talking about, for some reason I was alluding to like new fabrication. I know we shouldn't be certifying repairs you don't look at. Unless you
I guess. Well, same thing, right? I know a lot of people will have no problem signing AB83s on site for a fab shop that did all this work and they never looked at 1 inch of it. I mean, if that's your comfort level, good for you, but that's not something I'm interested in. I want to see the product that they built for us that we paid all this money for before I'm going to say it's acceptable. The document, the paper shuffling, that's a big part of it, but actually looking at the thing, don't forget about that too.
No, totally agree. Scott, this is the last one, and I think your favorite question that we kind of got.
Well, this one wasn't really a question. It was I like to call them fireside chats. It's kind of a colleague, a friend of mine that he knew the answer to this too. It's just one of those situations where you want to reach out to somebody, and ideally they say the same thing that you're already thinking. I know I do that a lot too. If I'm a little unsure of something, I'll call someone that I know is pretty knowledgeable about the same area and just ask them. And then if they give you the same answer, it's like, okay, now I'm feeling really good about this, especially if you're going to go back to a client or whoever it is or the contractor and be like, okay, no, this is why we're not doing this, or this is why we are. Just gives you that little bit more confidence, I guess, if you will. Maybe backs it up a little bit. Unless you both don't know what the hell you're talking about, then you're in big trouble.
That could easily happen, but at least you're comfortable with it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, like again, it just leads to question asking, right? And
exactly, yeah. So this one is a topic I'm pretty interested in. I'm not going to say I'm an expert in this by any means, but I run into these things often enough, and it is a good interest of mine. And it is around bimetallic welding, and specifically with welding two exotics together, which is always fun. So the inquiry was, there's some repair scope or construction scope, whatever it was, but there has to be some welding happening, and it is Inconel, I forget which grade, let's say 625, for example, to a duplex. Now, two pretty interesting alloys just to weld to themselves on their own. So it's a bimetallic. The consumable is let's go with the 625. I'm pretty sure it was, because it was one of the no ferrite ones. So it was like a nickel chrome moly 3, let's say. Everybody knows and loves that one. Not much iron in there, like less than 1%. So at this specific site, they have a spec, and a lot of sites will too, for duplex, and they have a ferrite range for the weld metal for the duplex, and it's going to be, in that neighborhood of 30 to 65 is kind of that sweet spot. You really don't want to be below that, and you don't want to be over, 70. So that's a pretty common spec you'll see. Now, it's pretty hard to apply that to bimetal welding, especially to something like nickel, and more specifically when the consumable is not duplex, because you're not going to get your 50% ferrite in a nickel consumable that has no iron in it. It's just not chemically possible. You're going to get possibly a little dilution from the duplex, where you get a bit of that iron in there and you get it in solution, but it's not going to register 50% like you're looking for. It'd be hard to pick up a point in some cases. Now, they do have a legitimate concern, because ferrite is very critical to the duplexes, and that's really your only measure of heat input with that material, other than watching them do it. So it is a legitimate concern, and you maybe could, no, sorry, for this specific example, it's not, because it doesn't really apply. What I'm alluding to is with the duplex, it's a legitimate concern. If you're welding those two materials together, you want to be very thorough in inspecting the weld metal and the has for the ferrite, because that's very critical with that. With this example, you can't really do it. There's other reasons for measuring the ferrite in nickel consumables, but this one is just a matter of like applying a spec where you can't really apply it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, those bimetallic welds, usually they fall in those gray zones, and like it's hard unless you have an actual. Yeah, you always have to. Well, I think where you're going with this is you have to default to the welding procedure and the PQR for these types of details, right? Because that's what these. Sorry if I stole your thunder on that.
Well, that's exactly what the kind of the problem, or the problem with getting the procedure approved is the PQR didn't have ferrite testing, but their argument is it's not going to show you anything because there's no iron in that consumable, and you're not really going to get enough dilution. You're definitely not going to get enough to get the 30 to 60% or whatever it is they're looking for. So there's really you really can't meet that spec for that. So you've really got to look in those situations. You've got to look at your duplex spec. You got to look at your nickel alloy spec, see which applies to each one. And there's some things that just won't apply. If you feel you have to do an official spec deviation, that's fine if that's what your company protocol is. But it's just kind of one of those interesting ones. And I love running into things like this, the exotic welding, the kind of testing done. I think in our section 9, whatever the first one was, 12, I think, is that the one we went into, or maybe it was 13, where we went into like the macros and some of the odd PQR testing that some of these, it must have been the second part because it was the client spec one where it was a lot of places are looking for macros, especially in like the wet H2S and that. Nobody does that. So that's a totally different example, but it's just kind of one of those weird things where you have to deviate from your spec because there's really no reason to do that on a PQR unless it's built specifically for that. This case would be the same thing too. They could do another PQR and do an addendum to their procedure and do the ferrite testing, but they would have to set out a range they're looking for, and it wouldn't be the 35 to 60. It would have to be like, okay, we're looking for a minimum of 1 or something. It would have to be something laid out like that. So just an interesting, I just love these exotic metallurgy questions.
Your knowledge never ceases to amaze me, Scott.
Sorry, not questions. Fireside chat is the way I like to go about these ones.
Yeah, as an inspector, that I'd say I don't have the breadth of knowledge of welding as Scott does, but I would familiarize myself with the WPS if I could. I would go see if what they did when they initially fabricated that and see how they tested it and stuff like that. Definitely be cognizant of the interpass temperatures and be there. Like, you don't have to like bird dog them, but this is an interesting joint, like Scott said, and you can not sit there, but be present and kind of just watch how they're doing it because they know what they're doing. Like the organization doing the fabrication or the repair knows which procedure usually which to use. So it's interesting that they got pushback from the client based on that, and that's most likely, I think, in my opinion, just because on the P&ID there was a line spec change and they kind of just chose the more stringent one on it. Like, why it seems fairly obvious as to like, well, why wouldn't we do ferrite testing, like you said, because of the duplex, right? But that nickel and the electrode kind of throw that all off.
Yeah, you gotta look at all sides of it and apply it properly. You definitely want to be, and it's probably a case of maybe a newer engineer or whoever's reviewing this thing, maybe they're seasoned too. I don't have all the details on that, but they're just looking directly at the spec and like, look, it doesn't meet this. We have a problem. It's good to push back a little bit and ask the questions to the company with the welding procedure, but you've got to look at why that wasn't done, and you've got to kind of look at why the spec doesn't totally apply in some cases too. So it's it's definitely an interesting one, and the fact that a company has a procedure like that on hand or a couple options is, they probably know what they're doing. They've probably done it a few times. Just the fact that they have that one in their back pocket. Oh, that's no big deal. We got one of those.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a pretty interesting one and some good conversation there.
Yeah, it's another one of those things we could go into for an hour because not nickel chrome moly 3 specifically, but some of the other Inco grades like the Fe2s and that have the iron. There's other reasons why you would want to measure the ferrite in those, and it's a totally different from the duplex, and it's going to be totally different percentages or points. Mm-hmm. But I don't think we have really time to dive into that one, but definitely an interesting topic too.
No, and actually somebody else we just threw that question to, not in an asking, but as a curiosity. The first thing they said was to check out 582, API 582, because that does have a lot of welding, a lot of good welding information to reference for that, and that's why it's there, right? So check it out.
It does, and it's the only knock on that is it's a bit of a buckshot of industry wide. This typically works type of thing. Unfortunately, the only place you're going to get the super detailed stuff is in those client specs. It's just knowing when you always want to apply them when they apply, but when they can't apply in like these situations, you just got to recognize that and understand why it's not meeting that, or you just, ante up and have them do another PQR for you. I'm sure they'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I guess. Hey, Scott, I think our first episode went way longer as usual than we wanted.
We're always shooting for like these half-hour episodes, and it's never the case.
So, thank you everybody for listening. I think it was a pretty good episode. Thank you for your questions, actually, and
keep the questions coming. We'll if we get enough of them, we can do this more periodically than at the end of the year. But keep the questions coming in. We like them. And they don't even have to be questions. They can be things that you know the answer to, like this last one, and you just want somebody else's take on it as well, right? Those are always good. It's nice to have these chats about things.
Yeah, and even something that you're curious about. We did get a lot of actually inquiries on reviewing specific documents like 510, 570 and stuff like that, which is good. It takes time, but it just takes time to put all this stuff together. So we're doing the best we can while still trying to like work and earn a living. So
Yeah, we still got to pay the bills and buy groceries, unfortunately. So
yeah, we still got to figure out how to get this going. But anyway, I don't know. We forgot to sign off too. We struggled with our sign in and sign off.
I think I got one. If one just came to my head.
Oh, okay. Oh, geez, work for free like Frank or what?
Oh, that's a pretty good one too. But just remember that the ferrite tester is not just a random number generator.